Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time I'll try to get to a few questions. I'll try to answer some kind of rapid fire style at the end, but we'll start with this one that comes to us from Tim Timbley, who asked, "Hey Thor, did you see the series finale of Andor got more views than Ahsoka? It was the last of the great classic Star Wars shows." Okay, so I'm going to start this out by saying what I think anyone who watches a good deal of my videos already knows, which is that I thought Andor was essentially a masterpiece, some of the best Star Wars we've ever got anywhere ever. And that the Ahsoka series was, well, it wasn't awful. It had its moments. Some episodes, especially towards the middle, were better than others, but overall it just missed the mark, I think, and was nowhere near as good as it could have and should have been. And also as someone who'd like to see Star Wars maybe lean a bit more towards the style of Andor from time to time. Not always does it need to be quite like that, but as I've argued before, this is a franchise that is enjoyed by many generations, and most of these generations are adults now and they'd probably like something a bit more, shall we say, complex from time to time. Again, not always, but sometimes it's nice for Star Wars to take itself a bit more seriously than, say, the Ahsoka series did, and be more character-driven instead of, and then this happens type storytelling. Basically, what I'm saying or getting at here is that, sure, even though I wish I could kind of declare victory for Andor, that it did better than Ahsoka in some respect, not out of spite for Ahsoka, but rather as a means by which to justify getting more like Andor in the future. But unfortunately, by pretty much no viewership metric did Andor actually beat Ahsoka. Certainly not when you just look at the week-to-week numbers, and not even when you compare the finales of the two does Andor actually get the win here. And I mean, sure, if you just put the raw numbers for the finales side by side, and these numbers come from the Nielsen ratings, these are not internal Disney numbers or anything, but if you just put the raw numbers side by side and ignore any and all context, it does look like Andor was a clear winner. But you do have to keep a couple things in mind, the first of which is that the Andor finale was 59 minutes in length, and the Ahsoka one was only 49. So if you then do the math, if you divide total minutes watched by length of episode in order to get a very, very rough approximation of number of views, or at least a more fair and comparable metric, it turns out the Ahsoka series got 11.7 million views and Andor got 11.8 million, which again, or still sounds like a win, just barely, but it does still look like a win for Andor. However, something else has to be factored in, which is that this is simply the total number of minutes watched for the entire series or all episodes in that particular week, the week of the finales. Basically meaning this is how much people watched all episodes that week. And at this point, by the finale, Andor had 12 episodes out there, and Ahsoka had only 8. You also have to factor in that, on average, Andor episodes were longer than Ahsoka episodes, though not by much, actually. It was only like 2 minutes longer on average. Still, simply put, by the end of their runs, there was a hell of a lot more Andor to watch than Ahsoka overall. And thus it seems that technically, though it still was probably very, very close, but it does figure that more people likely watched the Ahsoka finale than watched the Andor finale in that final week anyway, or the final week of their shows releasing. And I point that out because we don't know what happened in the meantime. We don't know how well Ahsoka did after it ended, or how many people have gone back to watch it again or found it since. And we don't know how many people have gone back and watched Andor again or found it since. Though I do think we can kind of assume or hope, with the numbers trending up for the finale of Andor and not so much for Ahsoka, that long run Andor may potentially have or will do better and kind of get the win. It also has to be mentioned that on the final week of Andor, or during that week last year, that was the week of Thanksgiving here in the US, and Disney put the first 3 episodes of Andor up on all sorts of channels across their media empire in order to drum up some interest. Which I'm then guessing by that, well, pretty drastic increase in minutes watched that final week, that at least some people caught those 3 episodes on TV somewhere during that week, and then immediately went on to check out more on Disney+. And that potentially means 2 things, one of which being that the finale, again, likely didn't beat Ahsoka. It was probably more about new people finding the show. But that, in turn, it also meant that, a whole new wave of viewers may have come in to watch it all and hopefully like it. Which is good news. It'd be great if it had some legs on Disney+. That may indicate to Disney and Lucasfilm that, well, maybe their advertising for it, or the name they went with, may not have been the best. That may have been kind of the issue. Not that the show itself was bad and that people didn't like it or didn't want to watch it. In other words, even if it lost to Ahsoka that final week, it may ultimately be a different type of win for it, that in the long run the viewership was there and will thus signal to Disney and Lucasfilm that a show like Andor can be successful if it's managed better, or advertised better, or named better. I just don't think a lot of people had much interest in checking out a show named Andor. As I've said before, even something more generic like The Dark Times likely gets the casuals or normies more excited than something called Andor. Alright, and now on to a few more questions that I'll try to give a somewhat quick, rapid-fire, off-the-cuff response to, starting with this one from Janine Schultz, who asked, "Hey Thor, I'd like to try and offer a more hopeful question to raise some spirits. What is your favorite Star Wars novel and why? What drew you in? Was it the author's particular voice, a character, the problem challenge faced? Is it a comfort read that you fall back to often, or is it something that you'd like to pick up again after so long to fall in love with all over again?" And though I don't know that it's the best Star Wars book ever, my favorite has to be Heir to the Empire, simply because of the circumstances around it. I remember being 13 years old and hearing this book was coming out. I remember going to the mall to buy it at a bookstore. I remember coming home and reading it in like record time for me. I remember just so much around the book and also liking the book. But it was just the story of post-Return of the Jedi Star Wars. I had been waiting for that for, at that point, almost 10 years, I guess. So I was just super excited to read the book. I loved the book, and it will always be kind of my favorite Star Wars book. Alright, next up, this one from Moonbeast, who asked, "Hey Thor, have you heard about the alleged leaked original draft of Episode 8? One where Luke was at the ancient Jedi Temple reaching out to Force-sensitive children around the galaxy and boosting their abilities when they needed help. And that was why Rey was able to do what she does with the Force in The Force Awakens. What do you think of that concept?" And first of all, I think this was proven to be false, that this was just somebody's kind of script they made up and put it out there like it was leaked, and there was some other crazy things in it that kind of proved it was a leaked script. I'm not sure if we're talking about the one and the same script here, but either way, what do I think of the concept of kind of boosting Force ability? I mean, if Luke's at the Jedi Temple and it's this, nexus of the Force and he can somehow reach out and help others, I guess to some degree that's better than what we got. Not sure I kind of love the idea. Again, I kind of prefer when the Force is more internal, that it's something you have to grapple with all on your own. You either use it for good, you use it for bad, and that determines your fate, essentially. But I don't know, probably better than what we got. Okay, let's now move on to this one from Veterlit Torf, who asked, "Hey Thor, I was wondering about the Jedi attachment rule. The Jedi forbid attachments to anything, but weren't the Jedi emotionally attached to the Jedi Order and the Republic?" I think you have to keep in mind that attachment in this regard is more about like obsession with something rather than just like having it and being for it, which is how the Jedi view the Republic. They're kind of in league with them, they're for them. I don't know that they're like emotionally attached. That said, they were kind of attached to their rules, which was part of the problem. I think Qui-Gon exemplifies this, how he wasn't, all about following the code. He was all about doing what is right. And I think that's where the Jedi go wrong. They were so attached to the Jedi code that they lost sight of what they were supposed to do. Same goes with being with the Republic. They were so on the side of the Republic that they started to just serve the Republic instead of serving the will of the Force, and, well, we see how that went all kinds of wrong, don't we? Alright, let's now move on to this one from Yuger, who asked, "Hey Thor, what do you think the state of the galaxy should be after the rise of Skywalker? Do you think there should be a new Republic, or should there just be individual planet systems governing themselves?" And what's interesting is this kind of got brought up in a book already, in the new canon actually, the book Bloodline, which had to do with Leia and kind of the politics of the time quite a bit. It takes place 6 years before the events of The Force Awakens, and they're already kind of discussing some of these things. You have these two factions, one of which believes there should be more of a central government, one believes that each planet or system should kind of govern themselves more. And so I think if you're going to hold to that especially, I think post the rise of Skywalker, I think certainly that'll be a discussion. Like, we've had a New Republic that was really bad, especially with what we've seen in The Mandalorian and elsewhere in the Mandoverse time period. So certainly that would be a discussion. How to proceed would be one of the big things of the time, I absolutely think. Okay, and now we have this one from Severitus, who asked, "Hey Thor, I also believe that a great strength of Star Wars is that it is a story of good versus evil. But where I very passionately, though respectfully, disagree with you is the idea that Star Wars must always, or nearly always, depict the Sith and the dark side as exclusively evil, and Jedi as exclusively good. Long before Disney bought the rights to the IP, I was so sick of this. I was sick of the collectivist, absolute altruistic paradigm of the Jedi being put on a pedestal and the Sith always being depicted as imperialists or fascists. I crave for nothing more than to see a Sith use the dark side for good ends. Would love your thoughts in a lightning response video if you are so inclined. And this one I probably could go full video mode on, but long story short, I don't like the idea of the Sith being ever thought of as good and the Jedi ever thought of as being bad. Certainly we've had Jedi that go bad and do bad things. I mean, Anakin, good example. But really it's all about how you use the Force. What makes you a Sith is that you are selfish, that you use the dark side. It's not so much that you kind of want to be a Sith and do good things as much as you just by default become a Sith, right? You become one because you're doing bad things, not because you think this power set is better to, accomplish good things. I don't know if that makes a ton of sense, but I guess what I'm basically trying to say is a Sith is just a selfish person. So the idea that a Sith would do good things kind of means they're not a Sith, right? Same with a Jedi. If you're a Jedi, that means you're a selfless person and you want to do good things. So if you're doing bad things, you're no longer a Jedi. All right, let's do one more question before wrapping it up, and this one comes from Gamer the Void Gaming Center, who asked, "Hey Thor, how would you feel if more franchises like Star Wars took a crack at Marvel's What If series? For me, I think it could be a cool way for stuff to be explored without actually being in canon and could expand different scenarios. Like, what if Anakin helped Mace Windu defeat Palpatine, or what if Anakin beat Obi-Wan, etc.? I feel like it's a great concept that is only ever explored in Marvel, despite being a good way to re-explore topics and places that were in other media." And coming from someone who's done plenty of what-if stories here on my channel, yeah, I'm absolutely all for something like that. I don't want it to be like a focus where you're constantly doing that and not really furthering the main canon, but certainly for fun you could do little short stories about that. You could even have a character of some sort in the world between worlds, and they're looking through different portals and they're seeing how different events could have played out. I mean, you could actually almost in a way put it in canon and have it not be canon, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's a fun idea. I'm all for them doing that. Alright, and with that, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn. Take to the comments below. Tell me what you think of anything and everything I had to say here. Or, of course, you can always leave a question for a future lightning response video. I may try to do more of these rapid response ones I've been meaning to and just never do for some reason. But if you like this style of video, I will gladly do more, or the rapid style video. Whatever though, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.